This is Wayne from MyTech News, and in this video, I'm going to be reviewing Strikers 1945 2 for the Nintendo Switch. So what is Strikers 1945 2 for the Nintendo Switch? Well, it's an arcade port from a company called Psikyo, and it's a AKA shooter or a shmup. And I haven't really had any exposure to this genre outside of games of Graceful Explosion Machine on the Nintendo Switch, and I have played the classic arcade game Galaga, so I have had some exposure to the shmup genre, but I'm not really too big into shmup, so this is one of my first ventures into the shmup genre. Now this game can be found on the Nintendo eShop for a retail suggested price of $7.99, and in fact, if you go to the Nintendo eShop right now and you scroll around, you may notice that there's quite a few shmups on the Nintendo Switch. We have a good selection to choose from, and the nice thing is they're all pretty much $7.99 outside of Ikaruga. Outside of Ikaruga, they're pretty much all $7.99. So what made me decide to pick up Strikers 1945 2 compared to some of the other ones on the Nintendo Switch? Because I must admit, there are a lot of shmups on the Nintendo Switch, and a lot of them are actually very good. But one reason I wanted to pick up Strikers 1945 2 compared to some of the other shmups on the Nintendo Switch is because I like the fact that it's a military shmup. So it has your standard bombers, it has your standard military airplane crafts, it has your fighters, your jet planes, and things like that. It's nothing weird. It's not like you're using a spaceship, or it's not like you're fighting aliens and things like that. It's just pretty much based around fighting and around wars and around world wars and things like that. That's why I love this. I know there's some other ones out there on the Nintendo Switch that are also themed around world wars and things like this, but a lot of people were recommending Strikers 1945. Now when it comes to the Nintendo eShop, there are actually both versions of Strikers 1945. So you have 45-1 and then you have 45-2. The reason I went with 45-2 over 45-1 is because the backgrounds look slightly better and the music is slightly better. But outside of those two aspects, pretty much both Strikers 1 and Strikers 2 pretty much play identical. And if you've never played either of them, when you look at them, you won't even be able to tell the difference between both of them. But there are slight differences, so that's why I went with Strikers 1945 2. And there's really no reason to own both, in my opinion, because they play so close to each other. If you're going to buy another shmup, I highly recommend don't buying both Strikers 1945s. Buy maybe Strikers 1945 2 and then buy a different shmup. But how does this game play? How does this game handle on the Nintendo Switch? Well, let me start off by saying this game actually plays very nicely on the Nintendo Switch. I've been loving my time with Strikers 1945 on the Nintendo Switch. It's pretty much your standard shmup. There's nothing crazy going on. You pretty much pick from a multiple selection of different airplanes. You pick your airplane, and they all have they all feel slightly different from each other. They all have different shots that they shoot out. They all have different specials that they that you can initiate with the aircrafts in the game. But outside of that, there's not really too many power-ups in this game. Actually, the power-ups that you pick up in this game just pretty much increase how many bullets that you shoot from your airplane. So you're not going to be shooting anything weird. You're not going to be shooting like the laser beams out. You're not going to be shooting like fire out or anything crazy with these aircrafts. You're just going to be shooting strictly bullets. And then you have a special, which is pretty much your bomb. And each aircraft does have its own special. So for instance, one airplane may have a bomb, a big nuke bomb that'll actually shoot out in front of the airplane, or maybe one will actually detonate like 5 fighters out in front of your plane, and then you can actually hide behind your nuke bomb or the 5 fighters that are out, and they'll actually protect you on the playing field, which is actually nice. One thing to take note about Strikers 1945 is, of course, just like any other shmup, shmups are very hard games, so be expected to die. The main theme of this game is dying. If you're not prepared to die, then maybe this game's not for you. Now, I've already put in like 5 to 6 hours. I haven't played it all that much, but what I've played so far, I can say, is I haven't been able to beat the game yet. Luckily, with Strikers 1945 2, you can actually change the difficulty of the game. I have tried some of the other difficulties. They have a monkey mode, a child mode, a normal mode, and just different modes if you want to try it. But honestly, when you change the difficulty down slightly, it's still a very hard game. It's not like it's making the game much more easier, so you still have to be prepared to see all the bullets on screen. So there's actually a couple of things I forgot to mention when it comes to Strikers 1945-2 on the Nintendo Switch. First of all, this is probably one of the more obvious ones. It pretty much gives you really great battery when you're in handheld mode. When you're in handheld mode with Strikers 1945, you get around 5.5 to 6 hours. I've been getting pretty much solid 5.5 to 6 hours depending on if my Wi-Fi is on, how bright my brightness is, how loud the speakers are, and things like that. So you get phenomenal battery, but that's to be expected with a game like this because you can see the graphics are not very good in this game. It's an old retro arcade game, so you can see that it's not a powerhouse when it comes to graphics, so it's not going to be eating into your Switch's battery at all. It's phenomenal if you want a game to last you hours and hours and hours and not worry about the Switch actually running out of battery. Also, there is some things to take a look at in the menu besides changing the difficulty and things like that. You do have different filters in the game, so if you want to make it look like a CTR TV, or if you want to make it look like an arcade cabinet, you can play around with the different filters in the game, and on top of that, you can change the borders in the game. Unfortunately, you can't change the aspect ratio. Some people may want to change the aspect ratio to make this play in full screen because, as you can see, this game does not play in full screen on the Nintendo Switch. But why would you want to play this game in full screen anyway? Because when you stretch out an image like that, it's not going to look good. It's going to look stretchy. It's going to look pixelated and things like that. So it's better to have it look like an arcade machine just in the middle and then have the borders on the side. So you can play with a pictured border, or you can play with just a standard solid black border if you want to. I just thought I would mention those because those are some of the things in the settings. A lot of bullets on screen. The nice thing besides changing the difficulty in the game is the fact also you can actually increase how many lives you have. You start out standard with 2 lives, and I think you get 1 or 2 continues, so you don't get too much when you start. You may think that's a lot, but realistically, since this game is so hard, I suggest probably if you do end up picking this game up, you're going to have to go into the settings and actually go around and actually play around with the settings. Maybe bump up how many planes you get, bump up how many continues you get, change the difficulty and things like that, so you can practice and you can learn. When it comes to SMUPs, especially 1945, there's so many bullets on screen. A lot of the time it's really hard to see your aircraft. It's really hard to judge where to move. A lot of the times I've been making silly mistakes because I can't really concentrate on how many bullets are on screen. One thing I wish this game would have like some kind of button you can press to slow down time, but of course this is one of those more classic ones, so of course you're not going to get anything crazy, but that would have been a nice improvement of the game, maybe giving us something that can slow down time, because for a lot of people it may be too hard to see your aircraft and see all the bullets going on at screen at one time, because it can get overwhelming how many bullets are on screen. I guess all you can do is practice, 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 practice. One thing I can say nicely about Strikers 1945-2 is the fact that every time you do a new run, I think there's like 5 levels in the game, 5 or 6 levels, so there's not that many levels in the game. I think one run will take you 20 or 30 minutes, somewhere around there, but the nice thing about this game is they always mix up the levels, so when you start a new game, it randomizes between all the 6 levels, so you don't always start with the same one. They're pretty much always going to be in this random order when you play the game, so you're not always playing level 1 the same, level 2 the same, level 3, maybe level 3, level 2, level 1, level 4, level 4, level 5, level 6, so they're always going to be mixed up when you start a new run, and that's pretty good, so it kind of breaks up the repetitiveness and maybe the you playing the game over time, so you won't get bored. Honestly, this is also a good pick up and play game. If you're really fond of pick up and play games, then this is a game you may want to look at, because this is a game you can just turn on your Nintendo Switch, play this game for just a couple of minutes, put down the game. These games are perfect for quick play sessions, especially if you don't have a lot of time on your hands, or if you don't know what to play and you don't want to play a game that's very long or just very complicated, because there's only 2 buttons. You basically have a button to shoot, then you have the button to activate your special or your bomb in this game, and that's pretty much all you have. And then you move around with the analog stick or the D-pad. I've been using the D-pad. Realistically, you probably want to use a joystick for this like an arcade, but unfortunately I don't have one of those, so I'm stuck to the D-pad. I tried the analog stick out on the Nintendo Switch, and it really wasn't working for me. I didn't find it that precise. I went ahead and used the D-pad. What I can say is with the Nintendo Switch D-pad, even with the Pro Controller's D-pad, I still find it a little bit not the best. I think that it's a little bit too stiff for my taste, and sometimes I wish it was a little bit less stiff and a little bit more flexible, if that makes any sense, because I'm having problems where it's hard for me to move. I wish the speed of maybe your aircrafts could have been boosted up a little bit because I feel like the airplanes in the game don't move as fast as I wish because there's some time where there's too many bullets on screen and I can't move out the way. In my opinion, I just can't get the right movement speed, in my opinion. But other than that, it's a pretty good game. One thing I can say is if you're playing this game in tabletop mode or if you're playing this in handheld mode, you can actually play this like the arcade. So you can actually flip the Nintendo Switch on the side and it'll be up and down just like an arcade machine. And that's actually pretty cool. The only thing is, of course, it's not going to be full screen, of course, since the Nintendo Switch does have pretty thick bezels on the side. It would have been cool, of course, if the Nintendo Switch didn't have any bezel, then it would have been pretty cool. But even though the Switch does have some bezels on it, it's still pretty cool that you can play this game tilted on the side when you play in handheld mode or away from the TV. It does make it feel like an arcade game. One nice thing this game also does is it also does allow implementation of two-player co-op, and of course for the Nintendo Switch this is perfect, and you can play this game in tabletop mode away from a TV. Then this is going to be a nice addition. So if you're looking to get more co-op games, then this is a perfect game because you can play this with up to 2 other players. Overall, I like the sound design of this game. I like the sound of the bullets. I just like everything of this game. I like the art style of this game. This game is a very perfect game. There's not really anything wrong with this game. One thing, just thinking about something that is wrong with this game, I find sometimes that the controls of the game can be slightly slippery. When I say slightly slippery, I do mean slightly slippery. So most of the time, you really have full control over your airplane, but sometimes I feel like when I'm trying to move out the way, it's kind of finicky or gimmicky once in a while, but that's once in a blue moon. I've only had that happen maybe 1 or 2 times, but sometimes I can feel like I'm kind of having difficulty moving my ship, and sometimes I do feel like I get a cheap death just because the controls are kind of slippery, and sometimes it just doesn't work it's not as precise as I want it to. But for the most part, this game is a really good game. The controls are precise. The sound design is really nice. The graphics are really nice. It's a good 2-player co-op game. It's a very cheap game on the Nintendo Switch. It's only $7.99. This game does have a lot of replayability because you can just sit down, play this game whenever you want. And this is a game you're not going to be beating really quickly because this game is a very hard game. I wish also, just thinking about things that are kind of wrong with this game or wrong with shmups in general, I kind of wish there was more indicators on the screen to differentiate to pretty much indicate your ship and the bullets coming out on screen, because sometimes it's just too hard to see the bullets and your ship on screen because it's just, they look the same. Sometimes the colors is just really hard with so much stuff on screen. Sometimes you do get cheap deaths just because you couldn't tell where your ship was and you couldn't see all the bullets because there's so many bullets. I mean, this is pretty much a bullet hell shmup game. Anyway, can't recommend this game enough. Give this game a try. Is this the best shmup on Switch or is the best shmup game? I don't know, but this is one game that's actually a very basic and a very simple shmup, so there's not a lot going on. If you don't want a lot going on, you don't want a lot of power-ups, you don't want a lot of different shooting modes and things like that. You just want one shooting mode and one special, and that's it. This game is pretty much your basic shmup game, and it's very good, I think, for also people who are just trying to get into this genre. I don't know if it's necessarily the easiest to get into, but it is one of the beginner-friendly ones because there's not a lot of buttons you have to worry about in this shmup game. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from MyTech News, signing out.